Hi and welcome to Whiskey Shared. You're watching my review of Yoichi Single Malt. I'm Toby and you're watching Whiskey Shared. Welcome to my review of Yoichi Single Malt. This is a single malt whiskey from Japan and is from the Yoichi distillery. The distillery dates back to 1934 and its location was picked by Masataka Takatsuru, the father of Japanese whiskey, as its location was similar to that of Scotland. This particular whiskey uses a coal-fired distillation and was launched in 2016, and it meets all of the criteria to be regarded a Japanese whiskey. It's £78 in the UK and is 45% ABV. Should we find out what it tastes like? On to the whiskey. So before I start nose and tasting, let's have a quick look at the colour. I'd say that's like a straw colour, but it is potentially coloured. Let's start with the nose. Right, so first off, it's really fruity. I'm getting some pineapple. I'm getting some pear drops. I'm getting some Danish pastries. I'm getting some charred oak. There's definitely a smokiness in there. And I'm also getting like salt beef. It really is quite salty on the nose. Let's move on to the palate. Yeah, so this is quite light to start, but then after a little while it does open up on the palate and I start to get some orchard fruits. There's some sweetness like vanilla, honey. There's also some tropical fruits like pineapple. Actually, it's more like char grilled pineapple. It really is nice. Let's have another sip. Yeah, there's definitely a slight smokiness in there. Obviously, this particular whiskey, as far as I'm aware, does have some peated whiskey in it. So that smokiness is, I'd say, quite light, but it comes across as a heavy barrel char. The peat is very, very light, but it could be that, you know, my palate is more tuned towards peat. I have been told before that sometimes things that I can barely notice peat on, people, especially beginners, do notice it to be quite dominant. So potentially it is a little bit smokier than I'm actually picking up. Let's have one final sip. Yeah, so I'm getting the charred oak, I'm getting like some bacon spices, I'm getting a slight meatiness. I think that smokiness translates, on my palate at least, like smoked meats. And there is definitely some heat, there's definitely some sort of spiciness on the palate that it's definitely lingering. It's warming my palate and just lingering there. It really is quite nice. In terms of finish, I'd say it's a medium length finish. There's some heat, there's orchard fruits, there's some dry wood, and there's vanilla. It really is nice and tasty. In terms of value, well, as I said, this retails for around £78 in the UK, which for a non-age statement whiskey is, some would say, is bonkers. We don't know how old this is. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'd like to think that the average contents of this is probably nearing 10 years old, but it possibly isn't. It's really difficult to tell, but I think for value, I think £78 is probably a little high, but I think having a quick look online and how much I paid for this some time back, I think it hovers around the £65 mark in the UK when it's on offer. And I think that's probably, if you're going to go for Japanese whiskey, I think that's probably a good place in terms of where the value is in Japanese whiskey at the moment. But in terms of what this whiskey gives me, it reminds me of a Scotch whiskey. It reminds me of like a cross between Craigellachie and Tobermory. I think in a blind taste test, I think people would probably pick this out as a Scotch more often than not. But in terms of Scotch whiskey as an equivalent, you can obviously get the same for £40 to £50. So you are paying a premium for Japanese whiskey, but I think if you are looking for Japanese whiskey, I think this is probably one of the best places to start for a single malt where Japanese whiskey is concerned. And this is obviously a true Japanese whiskey. It meets all the criteria of being a Japanese whiskey. So obviously it's not non-chill filtered as far as I'm aware. It's not uncoloured as far as I'm aware. It's not 46%. But I think where you find Japanese whiskey and how this is presented is quite typical. So I think this is probably a good starting place for a good single malt, which is readily available. It's a shame, it isn't a few points higher with the ABV and naturally presented, but I think this is probably the best we're going to get from one of the big names in Japanese whiskey. If you've tried this, let me know what you thought in the comments. Always interested to hear. And if you think there's another single malt whiskey that I should try that can either better this or equal this, then also let me know in the comments. I'm always willing to learn and try new whiskey. Hopefully you found this interesting, and hopefully you'll come back for my final Nikka whiskey review in the series. Sauncha.
I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, why not give it a like or a comment, and please consider subscribing for more videos like this.